Hi everyone, today we're talking about tools. What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm John and today, like I mentioned earlier, we are talking about tools. We are in the middle of winter here in Ontario. It's super cold outside. As I'm recording right now, it's minus 13 degrees Celsius, and yeah, so that's super cold. And let's be honest, I haven't worked on the bus since December, since it started to seriously snow and the temperatures were seriously dropping below zero. And yeah, so it's been a long time now. It's maybe a month since I've worked on the bus, and as you can see behind me, well, there's still plastic sheet covering the huge hole I made by removing the rear of the bus. And so the next steps obviously is to recreate it. I haven't bought the square tubings yet and the rectangle tubings yet. It's soon to be done, so I'm not worrying about it. So today I decided to do something quite different compared to the other videos that you saw from me. Since maybe let's say 90 to 95% of the demolition of the bus is done, I removed the ceiling, I removed the walls, I removed the rear of the bus, the seats, the subfloor is completely removed. Now I'm in a metal cage technically. So the other things that I need to do, and I will have to wait until spring hits here in Ontario, it's like creating holes in the roof to have access to the roof when I will be working on the roof rack for the solar panels, for example. So without any further ado, let's start with my tools recommendation, and here's my top 5 recommendation for the demolition of the bus. So with the number 5, let's start with the hammer. And well, I used it to remove all of the rivets on the walls and on the ceiling. So there's also an honorable mention to the chisels and center punches that I used with it, because without them I wouldn't be able to remove the ceiling and the walls from the bus. Also, I used that combination, center punch, chisel, and the hammer to remove the rub rails of the bus. So yeah, number 5, it's the hammer. It's a no-brainer. It's super useful. So that's my number 5. Number 4, it's the power drill. So the power drill that I used is this one. I used it at the beginning when I wanted to remove the rivets from the rub rails. Well, it didn't work out as I wanted to, but I used it for numerous rivets. It was super fast. So it all depends on the rivets that you are using, but I can switch to different bits, drill bits, titanium drill bits. So that's what I recommend. And yeah, that was very useful. And the way that it is used with the handle. You have more grip, you have more power. Technically not power, but you know, you can push with more power. Yeah, let's say that. So that's literally the one that I recommend. It's a Makita, Japanese brand, and yeah, very efficient. So that's the one that I would recommend. Also, the good thing that good thing that I had also this one is when I cleaned up the roof for the paint with the elastomeric paint. I used a brush like this that I could put onto it instead of the drill bit, and also because it's rotating super fast, I was able to like remove a significant amount of rust very easily. So that's why it's my number 4. I was able to use it for different purpose, and it was super efficient. Okay, right now move on to my number 3, and the tool that I would recommend hugely, oscillating multi-tool. And for me, I used it for in 2 occasions. One for removing the subfloor under the driver's seat. It was very easy to use it with this. I was able to reach different area that were very difficult to reach normally with other kind of tools. So this is why I bought this. It's from Canadian Tire, from those who live in Canada, and it's a Mastercraft. I think I spent $50 Canadian on that. So, and it comes with different accessories. So this part here is made to cut metal. There's another one to cut wood, and the other reason that I use the oscillating multi-tool is to remove the glue from the stickers that were outside the bus. It was a pain to use, it was a pain to remove, and I spent numerous hours trying to remove them manually. But then when I remembered that there's a special tool that you can put on the multi-tool to scrape things, then it was super fast. There are multiple speeds, so you can decide how you want to work with that. And yeah, so that's the one that I recommend. So that's my number 3, the oscillating multi-tool. So right now move on to the number 2, and this one is basically a no-brainer. It's the screwdriver. There are many screws in a school bus. For my part, most of the screws that I had to remove were on the floor. As soon as I removed the subfloor, there were many screws attaching the subfloor, the plywood to the metal floor with screws, and so I had to use it. And even though I was able to remove part of, well, almost all of the subfloor without the screws, because the screws were a little bit stuck, I still managed to remove lots of screws thanks to that. And I know that I will still use it because I still have like a little amount of screws to remove in the front of the bus, in the driver cabin, but that's not important for now. But yeah, so the electric screwdriver, it's a must. From other school bus conversion videos that I saw on YouTube, and it was not my case, but for the videos that I watched, the ceiling was attached with screws. So obviously, if you have an electric screwdriver, it's a must. It's a must-have, and so that's why I put it on my number 2. And also, like I mentioned earlier with the power drill, where I use this kind of brush to remove the paint and some rust around the frame of the windows. So it's a very useful tool. Not only I try to unscrew things with that, but I also was able to remove rust and remove different things that were onto the frame with that. So that's super useful, and so that's why it's my number 2. And then finally, as my number 1, and I think it's undisputed all around YouTube and all of the videos that I saw, it's probably the number 1 tool used for a school bus conversion. So yeah, my number 1 is the angle grinder. So the angle grinder has many purpose, and I used it for many things inside the bus. Obviously, it's a grinder, so I used it to remove rust, but I mostly used it to cut things. I used it to remove the rivets on the rub rails, the one that were kind of stubborn to remove with the power drill. I used the angle grinder to create a dent, and then use the hammer and the chisel to remove them. So I used it to cut that. I used the angle grinder to cut the whole rear of the bus. I used it to cut the floor, the metal floor, the metal floor section that I removed from the bus. I also used it, like I mentioned, to grind things. So I used this kind of spongy disc to remove some of the paint outside the bus, and when I realized it was too much, because this kind of tool, it rotates really fast. I think it's between 12,000 to 15,000 rotation per minute, so which is a lot. So obviously I used that, but it was too much on the paint. It removed too much of the paint, so I used something else. So also for part of the floor that I already grind with the angle grinder, I used this wire cup brush that is directly screwed onto the angle grinder instead of the disc that you can see here. The discs that I used to remove, to cut through the metal or to cut through the bolts, are a 4-inch diameter metal disc. And also something very important that I forgot to mention is with that, it's the first tool that I used inside the bus to remove the seats. Because the seats were bolted down onto the floor, but because it was rusted, it wasn't moving at all. I wasn't able to remove them, so that's where I used this first. And in the first video, I mentioned that I removed the whole right section of seats in half a day. So technically, in one day, I was able to remove all of the seats by myself. So that was super efficient, and that's literally my favorite tool. And that's the tool that I will still use in the future. For example, when I will be working on the roof to create a hole to access the roof from the interior of the bus, then I will be using that because it's super efficient. Also, I'm working on some windows that I deleted, and then I will put a sheet of metal instead. I've already cut the sheet of metal, and I use the angle grinder, and it's a clean cut, and so it was perfect. So that's it for my top 5. So as you can see, my number 5 is the hammer. Number 4, it's the power drill. Number 3, the oscillating multi-tool. My number 2 is the electric screwdriver, and then my number 1 is the angle grinder. I also have to add some honorable mentions because I didn't use some other tools for a long period of time, and they're mostly accessories, or they're mostly extension of the tools that I mostly use. So I've already mentioned the chisel and the center punch, and so yeah, I use them with the hammer to remove the rivets. So yeah, those are very good, very efficient. all of the brushes, the wire cup brushes and everything, so that's a must. I also have this pry bar right here, which was very efficient when I was working on removing the last section of the metal floor. So that was very useful. And also when I removed the plywood from the metal floor. Yeah, so I used that pry bar, that crowbar, to remove the plywood, and it was very, very useful, very efficient. Finally, the other tool that I would recommend, but you need to pay a certain price because the one that I had was very cheap and worked maybe half a day. It's an air-powered hammer. I used it basically to remove the rivets from the walls and ceiling. So it comes with a center punch and a chisel, and it worked. I bought it at Canadian Tire, but it was super cheap. And so sometimes when you are working with power tools, having cheap tools, it's maybe something that I would not 100% recommend. And so this tool was very, very useful. I was able to remove lots of rivets from the walls thanks to that. But like I said, after half a day, the tool stopped working properly, and so that's why I used the hammer and a chisel and the center punch, a manual center punch and a manual chisel, and I was doing the job all by myself. So yeah, so that's my honorable mentions. And also, obviously, when you work on the bus, there are accessories that you definitely need to work inside and to be safe and sound when you are working, because you are mostly working with power tools, so it could be very, very dangerous very fast. So obviously, safety glasses, safety goggles, very, very important, because you could get shards and you could get stuff that coming through your eyes, so obviously you need to get protected. Masks, when you are grinding rust or cutting things and everything, you don't want to breathe that, because it's super toxic, and yeah, it's a health hazard for yourself. So this, and gloves, yeah, protective gloves, it's obviously a must. So yeah, also another accessory that I would recommend, is for your ears. It's an ear protection. So technically for myself, I didn't use any earplugs. Instead, I was using my headphones. They are noise cancelling headphones, so it helped me a lot. And I was enjoying the work that I was doing because I had music through my ears, and so it was very, very satisfying. And it was I was in a like state of mind, in a very specific state of mind every time I used the headphones. And so, as you probably saw on the previous videos, I'm talking a lot with the headphones on my head, and it's because of those two things. First, it protects my ears from any huge noise or everything or anything, and it also gives me like good things to hear, good things that I want to hear. So if you have any other tools that you would recommend that I maybe forgot, but like I said, I used those tools for my bus conversion. I watched my previous videos to make sure that I wasn't forgetting anything else. And this top 5 tools, it's only for the demolition part of the bus. As soon as I will start building the bus, and after some times, then I will do the same, my top 5 or top 10 tools for the building version of the school bus, the Skoolie, and then we'll see what kind of tools that we'll be using them. That's it for this video. I really hope you liked it. So these were my recommendations for tools to use when you are starting to convert your school bus, your van, your shuttle bus, whatever you're having, into an RV. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. Don't hesitate to comment below the video, and until next time, bye guys.